Welcome to my humble abode, darlings. Come in out of the rain and get comfortable. I have a story to tell you, and I hope you enjoy. If you do, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. Hello, my darlings. We are back to Uncivilized, Captain Nemo and the Legend of Dwarka. If you are enjoying this story as much as I am, please share it on your social media so that others can find it. It's such a wonderful book. Anyway, on we go. Chapter 2. Captain Nemo paced the deck of the Nautilus, its metallic shape dimly lit by the moon overhead. The lights were switched off in the hope that the submarine would not attract the attention of fishermen. Drawing a pocket watch from his coat, he saw the hour for the set-upon rendezvous had arrived. 1 month prior, during a brief foray ashore in Gujarat, the captain's niece, Teja, had contracted scarlet fever. He knew he could not risk a contagion being spread among the rest of his crew in such a confined space as the submarine. So he decided to quarantine her ashore for 30 days, under the care of land-based ally Arjuna Thakkar, and return for her at the appointed time. His younger sister, Mastani, mother to Teja, had wept bitterly at his decision. They were the only immediate family Nemo had left. But still, he remained resolute. "You haven't had scarlet fever before, Bahan," he had told his sister. "I cannot risk you falling ill as well." Gonçalo Acosta, a Portuguese sailor from Goa and one of Nemo's most physically strong crewmen, said, "I've had scarlet fever before, Captain. Please let me go protect the girl. Arjuna and the rest of our terrestrial allies are there to watch over her," Nemo began to explain. But his gaze fell upon Mastani, her eyes red and her face pale with grief. "Very well, Gonçalo, you may go ashore to look after Teja and bring her home in the skiff when she recovered. I will be mother and father to Teja during these 30 days, Gonçalo promised Mastani before setting out. Now the time had come for Gonçalo and Teja to return. Captain Nemo did not want to think about what he would do or what he would say to Mastani if Teja had not survived her illness, or if some other harm had befallen the unfortunate girl. He looked out towards the shore, scanning for any sign of the skiff carrying his crew. The hatch opened near at his feet, and his sister climbed up to join him. She asked anxiously, "Any sign of them yet?" "I'm looking, Bahan." Captain Nemo pulled out his spyglass as he noted an object in the water. His heart leapt when he saw the skiff in the dim moonlight approach the Nautilus. Mastani's heart was seized with terror as she noted the subtle change in her brother's expression. "Baya? What's the matter?" She gripped his arms. "What do you see? Is someone missing?" "No. On the contrary." He slowly lowered the spyglass and squinted at the approaching boat. "There appears to be actually a third person on the skiff." "What?" Nemo ran a hand through his silver-streaked hair. "Perhaps it's Arjuna, or one of the other terrestrial allies. Maybe they needed to confer with us." But when the skiff was near enough for its passengers to be clearly visible, Nemo and Mastani were shocked to see that the third person aboard was a complete stranger. She was a bespectacled white lady dressed in a blue cotton sari, and in her hand she carried a small suitcase. Teja jumped onto the deck of the Nautilus, and Mastani couldn't restrain herself from throwing her arms around her daughter, smothering her in tearful kisses. "Ma! Ma!" Teja playfully protested, and struggled out of her mother's embrace. "Ma! Uncle! This is my friend, Dr. Grace Evans." The Englishwoman hopped onto the deck and set down her suitcase. She smiled hopefully at the captain and pressed her hands together in a namaste gesture. "Your friend, Taja?" Captain Nemo stared at Grace as though a poisonous slee slug had slimed its way onto his private habitation. "She wishes to offer her services as a medic, Uncle. She saved my life. Heaven knows we've needed a medic since poor Dr. Sato passed away." Nemo switched from English to Bundeli. "What the devil were you thinking, girl? What would possess you to bring a stranger aboard the Nautilus? You know the dangers, you know the—" "Actually, I forced her to take me to you, Captain Nemo," Grace interjected in Hindi. "Manipulated her, really." Mastani and Nemo both stared and looked at Grace with wide eyes. Not only had this white woman understood them, but she had responded eloquently in the common language of North India. Captain Nemo quickly collected himself. "So you know who we are, I see. You do realize I could leave you here on the deck and lock the hatch and let you drown." Grace smiled placidly and responded, "That would be a reasonable course of action, but one which you did not take with Professor Anarax, which tells me you are not someone whose first instinct is to kill uninvited guests, especially ones who are scientifically inclined." Nemo stared at her in disbelief. He turned to Gonzalo, who was reattaching the skiff to its alcove in the hull. The sailor shrugged. "She's persuasive, Captain. She found us this very night and wouldn't leave. I figured you would know what to do with her." Nemo turned to Grace and folded his arms. "Well, Miss Evans, is it?" "Doctor," she corrected. "Top of my class, I'll have you know. I oversaw the foundation of a medical clinic in the village here, and it's been incredibly successful. We've branched out into training women as medics, and we've even made strides in developing new medicines, virtually all of which have proven to be highly successful." She squared her shoulders and pushed her spectacles up her nose, smiling proudly. Nemo narrowed his eyes. "Am I supposed to be impressed?" "Yes." He took a step closer to her and narrowed his eyes. "My niece says you are offering me your services. Are you abandoning this successful clinic of yours?" "The nurses at the clinic are quite capable and have no need for my guidance anymore. I had proposed to leave them that I may put my skills as a medical doctor to greater use. I was considering returning to Europe to see if I could muster funding and equipment for a scientific expedition to the island of Socotra, because it's home to many plants with supposed medical properties. Yes, I've been there. Get to the point, Doctor." "I'm getting there, Captain. Why seek funding for an expedition when I could simply offer my services on board your vessel? You are constantly traveling to the most remote corners of the Earth, and I know from what's been written about you and your Nautilus is well accoutred with laboratory equipment." Nemo crossed his arms. "What of it?" "You asked Professor Anarax for help with an injured crewman, so I knew that at least 3 years ago you were in need of a medical professional. Your niece has confirmed that that position has not yet been filled. If I were your doctor, well, I could hardly imagine a better position for myself." "And so you're asking to join my crew?" She picked up her suitcase and nodded, looking at him expectantly. Nemo shook his head in disbelief. "For the love of all that is sacred, woman, are you mad?" "I've been told so on several occasions. You aren't applying to a missionary society. This is a warship, Doctor, not a humanitarian organization." "A warship which is unable to fight for fear of making itself known." She studied his face with an air of smug confidence. "Since the publication of Professor Anarax's memoir, you haven't been able to attack naval ships lest you alert the world to your presence. You even had to go so far as to fake a report of your death to ensure no one would come looking for you." Captain Nemo narrowed his eyes and stared Dr. Evans down with a piercing gaze, yet she remained infuriatingly placid. Now that you know the report of my death was a fabrication, I can't let you go back to shore. You realize that, don't you? Yes, quite. If you let me go, I'll inform the British authorities that you are still alive. But if I am on your vessel, I'll be quite at your mercy. You've either gained a new hostage or a new doctor. The choice is yours. And why, pray tell, would an Englishwoman put herself at the mercy of a man who's gone to war against her country, instead of turning him over to the authorities? In all honesty, I cannot view England as my country, considering how little time I've spent there. I've lived in India since infancy. An officer's child, I take it. On the contrary, my parents were medical missionaries. After they died, I went to stay with relatives in England for a short time, then found patronage to study medicine in Europe. Once I completed my study, I returned to India. England is the country of my birth, but India is the country of my heart. She adjusted her spectacles. Does my history satisfy you, Captain? Captain Nemo looked at Tasia, who took Grace's hands. She's an amicable person, Uncle. She's very intelligent, too. And she cared for me during my illness. She saved my life. Nemo was displeased to see how fond his niece was of this Englishwoman. However, he had to admit that he was in need of a medic, and Grace's terms were not entirely unreasonable. This strange woman had come to him in secret without alerting anyone else, knowing he would not permit her to leave. That was at least indicative of her sincerity. And in any case, it wasn't as though he could send her away now that she had seen the Nautilus. Nemo nodded to Consuelo, who took Dr. Evans's suitcase from her hand. The captain stepped aside and gestured to the hat. Take care you don't knock your head against anything as you enter, Dr. Evans.
What? You're still here after the whole story? I really appreciate that, darlings. Please hit the like button and subscribe if you haven't. And I always love to hear from you. Have a glorious day, my darlings.